Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about the New York Islanders today as I continue to go through teams that missed the playoffs, going from the bottom of the standings to just below the playoff line. And we're getting into the ones that were pretty good. I think the Islanders played well at points this year, but the start of the season sunk them. So if you're looking for the argument that, a good start to the season is really important, the Islanders stand out as an example of that because they had a 13-game road trip to start the season. They were 5-6-2 coming off that road trip, which is not awful considering an exhaustive road trip like that went on for over a month. It's not a terrible record, but when they came home, they had problems with COVID at the time where the NHL is trying to figure out how to navigate it. They, of course, ended up shutting things down for December and into January, and we had games getting moved around. But before that took place, the Islanders played games with about half the roster or more than half the roster not available. And so we've got all of the guidelines changed now, so that really, it's highly unlikely we'll see that again. But it really hit the Islanders hard. And so they lost all 5 games on that homestand after the 13-game road trip. With all of that in place, they came out of all of it 5 games below NHL 500. And this is in the East, where if you're below 500 and it's the end of November, your season's probably done. So that's where the Islanders ended up. And they tried to get back into the hunt. They had some nice runs along the way. The record wasn't bad outside of, this November record is really what ends up sinking them, right? And that's with the 5-game homestand in there. So, yeah, for the New York Islanders, it was a really, really rough start. And that's basically it. Goodbye, everybody. I'm just kidding. So their final record is 37, 35, and 10, which is respectable. Respectable. They had 34 regulation wins, also respectable. And so it is with that in mind that it is a bit surprising, and I'm saying a bit, that Lou Lamoriello would fire the coach. But Lou Lamoriello's done this kind of thing before, and I've mentioned this in other videos lately. He has been known as a general manager to replace coaches, and that's just what he does. He did it plenty of times in New Jersey. Sometimes at very surprising points. New Jersey be going into the playoffs, playing well, and, I've decided to fire the coach. Okay. And then we'd all kind of watch and see what happened, and it often worked out. The New Jersey Devils, of course, had 3 Stanley Cups, 95, 2000, and 2003. I don't think they had the same coach for any of those. So this is how Lou works. It'll be interesting to see, with Trotz out, who replaces him. That's the big question right now, because the New York Islanders will be picked by some, and I get the feeling I'm going to be included, as a team that should bounce back from what was a really just poor year all the way across. And again, the schedule did them no favors right out of the gate. And when you look at the overall numbers, they didn't play badly. So their goals for was 22nd with 229. They do need to get their goal scoring into a better place. Maybe a new coach does that. Trotz, very defensive. So with a new coach, watch for Barzal to really take off. Matthew Barzal, not Martin Barzal, his unknown brother. So Matthew Barzal, I expect to really take off and score a bunch of points, depending on which coach they bring in. If it's an offensive-minded coach, Barzal could be in for quite the year. He should be at least a point per game. With scoring being up the way it is around the NHL, the style of hockey being played by the Islanders, I think, was suppressing some of the point totals these guys could put up. Watch for some guys to get a lot better. Again, it depends on who's brought in to coach, because not all coaches coach like for an offensive style. They might just coach the defensive side of it as well. Because the goals against were good. They had 231 goals against. That was 7th overall in the NHL. So they're top 10 in goals against. Their power play was good, 22.1%, which was 12th. And their penalty kill was excellent, 84.2%, which was 4th. So of the teams that missed the playoffs, for the New York Islanders, again, it really, I think, comes down to that start to the season. A better start to the season, we're likely looking at an Islanders team that maybe they don't make the playoffs, but they would have been a heck of a lot closer. And maybe the East would have had at least some tension in the final, 3 months? So for the Islanders, I do think they can turn it around. October, they were 3-2-2. Remember, those are all on the road. November, they were 2-8-0, so that's the month that really sinks them. December, they're 4-2-4. It wasn't great during December, but as I've mentioned, They were dealing with a lot of guys out of their lineup. Then things get better. January they were 6-4. February 5-5-2. March they were 10-6-1, and then in April they were 7-8-1. So their overall record, not bad. Again, they finished above NHL 500 with the 37-35-10 record, 84 points overall. And I could see them, I would say at least a 10-point boost if they don't deal with the same injury problems and if their scheduling's a little more balanced. I could see them absolutely ending up with at least 94 points next season, if not more than that. But again, it's going to depend on what happens behind the bench. Who do you bring in? So the top producers, and again, this is interesting. So Brock Nelson, 72 games, 37 goals, 22 assists, 59 points. With the right coaching, with the right system, Nelson could be a 50-goal scorer. He has a nose for the net. He has for years. There have been years where his goal totals might be a little bit lower, but he's always taking the shots. He's always getting the opportunities. The goal scoring should be higher from him. Barzal, 73 games, 15 goals, 44 assists, 59 points. As I said, Barzal's a superstar as far as I'm concerned. He just wasn't getting the points in the Islanders system. And so we'll see if with a new system those points show up. Dobson had such a remarkable breakthrough. And this is where people talk a lot about how, well, Trotz doesn't work well with the young guys. And I heard that about Dobson last season. What I saw was him gradually bringing Dobson along because he's a rookie, right? Or, well, was he still a rookie last season? I'll go with that. So he didn't play a lot, right? He didn't get a lot of minutes. He ended up being the number 7 defenseman. He ended up sitting out a lot. But this year, 80 games, 13 goals, 38 assists, 51 points. It worked. Whatever development hell people might have thought he was in, it worked. Dobson gets 51 points this year and was fantastic. Anders Lee, 76 games, 28 goals, 18 assists, 46 points. So that's two guys in Lee and Nelson that are pretty fantastic goal scorers. And Barzal, who's a really good setup man. There's a good offensive side of things here, even though they were 22nd in goals for. And then Bailey, who had a good run at the end of the year. 74 games, 14 goals, 30 assists, 44 points. Now, not on the list is Wahlstrom. Wahlstrom's the one I'll be really curious to see what happens with him next season because Wahlstrom, the goal scoring is there. He's got really good instincts. But again, the system being played by the Islanders stifles offense. So with a new coach, we'll see if that changes. And it does remind me of the old Devils. It does. The style of hockey being coached by the New York Islanders in this era is very similar to the New Jersey Devils in the trap era in the 90s and 2000s. It's different because the trap being employed in the mid-90s cannot work. That's why they took the red line out. Like you can do 2-line passes now. You couldn't before, so it made it much easier for the trap to work. Taking out the red line in part was to encourage more offense and to make it so that neutral zone traps don't work as well. But the Islanders, they have played this style, which tells me maybe that's Lou's fingerprints. Maybe that's what he wants more than anything else, right? So we'll see if that changes next year, and we'll see if Wahlstrom breaks through. A guy like Kiefer Bellows, does he break through and get a bunch of goals? Beauvillier was one of the most snake-bit players in the league this year. Absolutely ridiculous. So many opportunities, just not going for him. Now, pending UFAs, all defensemen. Zdeno Chara, based on the handshakes that were going on with him in their last game, I would say he's done. I would say that it's his final season, but he's surprised us before. It may be Green's final season as well. And this is a blue line that has Dobson on it. You've got Pulock, you've got Pelech. There's some really good depth on the blue line. I think they'll be fine. And then there's Sebastian Aho. Not that Sebastian Aho. This Sebastian Aho. And he's listed as UFA this coming off season as well. I thought he played well enough in parts here and there when he got into the lineup. So we'll see whether or not they keep him around. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they did. And so, yeah, the Islanders picture I don't think is that bad. I think that there's a good team here. They were a team that I picked them to finish first in the division this year. Obviously, that didn't happen. And so I likely will be picking them to have a bounce back next year. But it's going to depend on who they put behind the bench. And it's going to depend on what happens in the offseason. One thing I felt with the Islanders that may not have helped, maybe it is or isn't an issue, is that they were an older team. And this is a young league right now. And so I think they need to incorporate more of the young, fast players in there Not that all the old guys are necessarily slow. Speaking as an old guy, it doesn't necessarily mean you're slower. But they do need that energy level to come up. And I think if they can find a way to just get a few more goals without giving up more goals against, I think they're in a good spot to bounce back next year. We shouldn't see that huge separation between the playoffs and non-playoffs in the East again. But who knows? We didn't expect it this year either. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.